For staying with us. You're still watching AM Ghana here on Adwa Television. Well, today we're going to have a conversation with representatives from Barbados. Many of you don't know Barbados. Barbados is an island nation in the northern sector of the Americas. And I have with me via Zoom the Honorable Colin Jordan, who is a Member of Parliament for St. Peter Parish. St. Peter Parish is one of the administrative divisions of Barbados. Now, Barbados has 11 administrative divisions, and each administration is labeled or is named by its patron saint. So we are going to be speaking to the Member of Parliament for the St. Peter Parish. As opposed to what we have here as constituencies in Ghana, they have parishes. They call theirs parishes. So we'll be speaking to if you have Member of Parliament for St. Peter constituency, they would call it parish. He's also the Minister of Labour and Social Partnership and Relations and the Third Sector. And that will be speaking to Senator Reverend Dr. John Rogers, who is a parish priest at St. George Parish in Barbados. Good morning, gentlemen, and thanks for joining me today on AM Ghana.
Good morning. Good morning.
Well, due to time factor, should I say, is it still morning in Barbados?
It is very early in the morning in Barbados. It is still dark.
Approximately. What's the time now, approximately?
It is 5:15, approximately, in the morning.
Wow. The 5:15. Very well. So it's
5:15.
Right. It's 5:15 in Barbados. We are leading you by about 4 hours. So the morning is way spent. We're almost heading towards noon. So I'm wishing you a very good morning. May your day end fruitful. May your week be fruitful as well.
Thank you.
Very well. Now, let's speak a bit more about Barbados. I'd like to speak to Honorable Jordan, who is the Member of Parliament for St. Peter Parish. Give us an overview. For those who are watching, those who don't know Barbados, give us an overview of Barbados.
Thank you very much, Reginald, and it is really good to be here. Good to be here with Senator Dr. Rogers as well. Barbados is an island nation, 166 square miles, 430 square kilometers.
Wow.
It is part of the island chain of Caribbean islands. It is actually just outside of the chain when you look at that chain. So it's the most easterly of all the Caribbean islands. Small island, mainly coral limestone formation. But there's a part of the country that is clay, and we've been traditionally an agricultural-based society. So we were known quite a lot in the post-independence period, let's say in the 17th, 18th, 19th century for sugarcane production. And we've been, since 1627, a colony of Great Britain.
Yes.
And that was continually until 1966 when we got our independence from Britain. And we have been governing ourselves from that point on. But we have strong institutional structures. So while those structures were not always democratic, they never existed. So we've had a parliament, for example, since 1639. And so Barbados prides itself for, even as a small island nation, a small island developing state, as having pretty well established institutions. So that is Barbados in a nutshell. Our principal economic activity just before COVID would have been tourism.
Okay.
We still see tourism as the mainstay of our economy. And we also have a pretty thriving international business sector as well.
Very well. Well, thank you for this very highlight. Now, let me speak to Senator Dr. Rajes. Well, Senator, you're a reverend as well. Now, let me first of all find out, is St. George Parish one of the 11 administrative divisions of Barbados, or perhaps it's a name of a church? Because once you mention parishes over here in Ghana, we obviously alluded to the churches. Tell us about St. George Parish.
Okay, as you would have pointed out, and Minister Jordan would have pointed out, good morning, everyone. Good morning, Ghana. In Barbados, there are 11 parishes, each one named after a saint. And in each parish, there is a parish church. Along with the parish church, there's some, and this I'm speaking of the Anglican structure, to say not necessarily. Along with the parish church, there are other smaller chapels of ease. In terms of the actual administrative districts, you would have mentioned the constituency of St. Peter, but St. George is divided into two constituencies politically, St. George North and St. George South, so there are two representatives in Parliament for St. George. But the parish church is the main Anglican church in the parish of St. George.
Wow, wow, certainly interesting to know. And is there a political standing of the parish? Because, as you said, well, St. George being divided into two constituencies, with the church being the sort of the cap. Is it safe to say the capital?
No. The church in Barbados is disestablished. We became disestablished in 1969. And so the ties between church and state were separate at that point in time. So the church has no political standing or anything whatsoever when it comes to the political life of Barbados. We are independent.
Okay, right. Certainly, the church is obviously expected to be of such independence. Okay, well, we'll come to your position as a senator as well. Let me speak to Honorable Jordan. Honorable Jordan, so I'm glad about the overview of Barbados that you have given us. So Barbados was a colony of Britain, and in 1966, Barbados broke away from British colonial rule, being independent. So coming up onto 2021, that is 55 years of independence. How has Barbados been, breaking away, in as much as most of your practices, your governance structure, and the law are based on British principles? What has been the nature of growth of Barbados since independence?
Since independence, Barbados has taken responsibility for its internal affairs relative to matters like financing, and also in relation to our external affairs, our relations with other nations. And while continuing to use many of the structures that we inherited from Britain, we have tailored those structures, or attempted to tailor those structures to assist us in moving forward. So we make our own decisions in relation to what our tax policy will be, what the tax policy is. We make our own decisions in terms of how we address matters like education, healthcare, whether or not we're going to have, we made decisions on a polyclinic system that would have been since independence. We, in terms of refining our social security systems, again, some of the thinking started prior to independence, but fully manifested after independence. Our relationship with other nations, we continue to maintain relatively close ties, very close ties with the United Kingdom, but we govern and make our own decisions in relation to how we manage ourselves and how we manage our country.
Right, that's interesting. Senator Dr. Rogers, what is your representation as a senator for and also as a reverend for the parish? How do you play these roles?
Okay, our system of government is bicameral, and so there's the House, in which Minister Jordan sits, which is the major legislative body. and then there's the Senate, which is the upper chamber. In the Senate, there are 21 members. 12 are selected by the government, 2 by the opposition, and 7 by the Governor General. The 7 that are chosen by the Governor General are referred to as independent senators, and they usually represent various sectors within the society: religious, legal, trade unions, etc. And so it is within that context that I sit in the Senate. I find it complementary to my work as a priest because it gives me an opportunity to deal with matters of social justice and so on, and speak on behalf of the people at that level. Yes, I'm an Anglican priest, but in Barbados, we do have great linkages between the various denominations within Christianity and also within the various religions. We tend to operate very much as a cohesive society in that regard, and so it is very easy for me to do.
Wow, such easy it may be. Well, so tell us, you represent which of the social interests do you represent? Obviously, you represent the religious sector. Then, what other interests do you represent?
Well, I believe it's expected that I represent the religiousness, but there's also, I'm very passionate about social justice. In fact, I sit on the Anglican Communions Commission, Inter-Anglican Commission, Standing Commission for Unity, Faith and Order, which deals with the entire Anglican Communion and reporting to the Archbishop of Canterbury. So that's all a part of my work as well. So it gives me an opportunity.
All right. Honorable Jordan. Hello, Honorable Jordan.
Hi.
Okay, so you're still there. Well, Honorable Jordan, now I'm happy that you mentioned a bit of the economic standing or the economic landscape of St. Peter or Barbados. Now, you mentioned tourism as the mainstay. As a mainstay for Barbados. What is the state of tourism like in Barbados? Why? I mean, we've seen some pictures, yes, Barbados, we've seen especially the culture, where we see these dances, the fanfare, the carnivals, amongst other things. But what is that main aspect of tourism that you think that people out there should look out for in Barbados?
Let's say the fact that we are an island has the attraction of, well, not just an island, but a limestone island. It means that we have quite a number of very good beaches. We also have sunshine almost year round. And those things together make for a very almost idyllic, if I may say that myself, vacation spot. So it is a holiday, primarily a holiday destination for persons trying to get away from not just the hustle and the bustle of everyday life, but also from cooler climates. So that is an attraction. There's also, and I think that is maybe the primary attraction, but there are other aspects of Barbados that we've been pushing over the years, and one of them is our heritage. And we have a rich heritage in spite of our small size, heritage in relation, particularly in relation to our colonial past, but there's also heritage pre-colonial past that is still being investigated at the moment. But we've been a British colony for 300 years almost, and we've had stable government. We've been a primary producer of sugar because of sugarcane, and a very productive, from the British perspective, a productive piece of real estate. Really was how we were seen. And there is a phrase used, recorded in history, where it has been said that Barbados was the most valuable piece of land in the most valuable jewel in the British crown. So that is some of the history and heritage. Like I mentioned earlier, our parliament predates many. Our parliament, I think the parliament's older than ours in the British system would have been one in Virginia and then the one in Bermuda. So Barbados is the third oldest outside of the United Kingdom. So we have that history. We also have a history that we are coming to grips with, which is the history that included enslavement of African people in the Caribbean. Barbados was the first stop on that middle passage, that journey from the African continent to the Caribbean. It was called by the Europeans then the New World, even though there were people inhabiting here, but it was called the New World. And there is some history and deep connection between the African continent and Barbados, because Barbados was the first stop, and that forms part of the heritage. Not the most pleasant part of the heritage, but a part of the heritage, nonetheless, part of our history. And these are some of the things that we offer to persons who we invite to visit our shores and to enjoy what we have to offer in terms of our life, our way of doing things, our culture. That is much of what we offer.
British colonization left Guineans with many to desire. Like you say, not too pleasant, but at least we have forts and castles, amongst other things, that the British built and left behind, which today are legacy items for us as a country. Is it the same for Barbados, considering that he said it's the first stop for British colonization whilst traveling through several countries, especially in getting to Africa?
Yes, there is quite a lot of built heritage coming out of the colonial period. We have lots of what are considered great houses, and these are the houses that plantation owners lived in, built with the labor of our ancestors. But there are some houses that you would give an idea of the kind of lavish lifestyle for the particular time period that plantation owners enjoyed. Beside great houses, there are other buildings like the Parliament buildings, which is a very old building. Senator Dr. Rogers would tell you about the Anglican churches, because very soon after settlement by the English, churches were built, and many of them still have that very ornate look and a valuable part of our heritage. We did have forts, and in St. Peter in particular, there were quite a number of forts all along the West Coast because of the value that Barbados had for England. The island tended to be very heavily fortified, and there were quite a number of forts all over the island, but many of them were in the St. Peter area and the northwestern area of Barbados, because it was a major trading port for sugar being sent to England. And so we had quite a number of forts in St. Peter, and further north, maybe about 6 or 7 of them in a very small area. But that is part of the legacy and the heritage left by the British.
Okay, well, interesting revelations there. Maybe one of these days I should visit Barbados, but I'm going to come to a question that will perhaps facilitate my visit. Let me speak to Senator Dr. Rogers. Well, the Senator, so in your representation as a senator, in terms of religious interests, social justice interests, what are progress made so far by the current administration in terms of religious interest for the people of Barbados and in terms of exercising social justice for the people of Barbados?
Okay, well, with regard to the current administration has only been in 3 years, and they've had to deal with COVID almost straight up, along with the depressed economy when they came in. And like most administrations before them, religion plays a very central role in Barbadian life. I mean, it is a part of who we are and what we do. And so there's not much friction between government and religion when it comes to Barbados. There's always the concern for the religious element in ensuring that we have the space necessary to nurture our people and to keep the community together. So it never really becomes political in that sense. It is always to ensure that the entire community is kept together, and this government has continued to do that. When we went into COVID lockdown, one of the first things that was done was that the Prime Minister formed the Jobs and Investment Committee, and part of that included faith-based organizations in terms of food distribution, etc., to make sure that people were taken care of during the pandemic. So they have continued to do that work.
Barbados is a religious country. I want you to throw light on that. When you say Barbados is a religious, how religious? Well, apart from we knowing that let's say constituencies are named or after parishes bearing the name of a patron saint. How religious would you say Barbados is? What aspects makes Barbados that religious country?
As Minister Jordan would have pointed out, once the British settled in 1627, the church also came. And so the Church of England has been here from 1627, from settlement at Old Town in St. James. And it has built out the basic fabric of what Barbados is in terms of religion and education, because the church played a very pivotal role in education. So most of the schools were church schools set up around the country, and those were used to educate the populace. Over time, once we became disestablished and independence came in, the government took over, but the government always had a religious interest, so it was almost like a seamless transition from the church schools to the government schools, and so in that way, but the very fabric of the nation has always been kept on a religious footing. Over time, the Pentecostal movement emerged, coming out of the United States, etc. And they too have also started schools to ensure that the education continues, as well as the Adventist Church, which does a lot of work with our young people and has been doing some great work throughout the country as well. So it's always been there.
Well,
Minister mentioned the heritage, and the church has been an integral part of the heritage of what Barbados is, because most of our churches, the British actually settled Barbados as home, it seems. And so Barbados was referred to as Little England. So they named the places after places in England. There's a Pinfold Street in Barbados, there's an Ipswich in Barbados, there's almost every name you can find is in Barbados. There's actually a portion of Barbados called the Scotland District, because it resembles parts of Scotland. And for example, the church of which I am leader, St. George Parish Church, was first built in 1641. And well, the first church would have been built in 1641, and the current building happens to be the oldest ecclesiastical building on the island right now, because it survived a devastating hurricane. There's a rich heritage here.
Okay, well, okay. Such great points to learn. Let me return to Honorable Jordan. Well, Honorable Jordan, so now you told us about tourism, which seemed to be the mainstay for Barbados until COVID-19 set in. But before we speak about COVID-19, you are Minister of Labour. Now, these are trying times, and obviously no country was ever ready for COVID-19. The impact, it just hit us, and the impact is felt across. In countries like ours, people had to be laid off because organizations were suffering one way or the other. Now, in Barbados, in St. Peter, what is the nature of labor? Because obviously people will be looking out there to the outside world. What labor options are available? What is the current state of labor, briefly?
The landscape in Barbados in relation to labor worker relations is no different from any other place across the world. We the COVID-19 pandemic has been what some people refer to as an equal opportunity destroyer because it has impacted every country, developing, rich, poor, in pretty much the same way. So, like you indicated in Ghana, where persons were laid off, we had similar situations in Barbados, where businesses, the traffic just slowed. So we, for example, never closed our borders. We never did. However, because flights just stopped, planes just stopped traveling, stopped flying, and it meant that persons who would ordinarily visit Barbados were not able to visit Barbados. Countries went into lockdown. So hotels felt it almost immediately, restaurants, and then all of the other types of business that feed off of tourism. So clothing stores, bookstores, even in supermarkets, we saw reductions because income was now reduced, people were now spending only on what could be considered basics to get by. So the total economic landscape was impacted in a pretty significant way, and it slowed the country's economy right down, brought the economy almost to a standstill. Now, that meant that businesses started to adjust. Part of their adjusting was to lay off persons. From a government perspective, we asked businesses, employing organizations to hold their staff as much as they could. But we as a government had to ensure that we had in place the social safety net that would allow persons, those who lost their jobs, not to fall through the cracks, as we would say in our vernacular, but that we would make sure that they were at least able to have something to eat. So it did impact the entire country of Barbados, not just St. Peter. I think Barbados is a relatively small place, and so none of us was insulated. It added some tension to the labor relations in the country, because with many people being laid off and some being beneficiaries of unemployment benefits, recipients of unemployment benefits, some wanted to take the paid vacation leave, there were some challenges. We saw employers beginning to panic. We saw workers beginning to panic because it was just an unusual situation. This was definitely not the ordinary industrial relations climate. It was very, very different. Nobody really knew what was happening, what the outcome would be, how long it would last. And so coming out of all of that, there was, besides the dislocation, there was quite a bit of friction between employers and workers over the fallout of the pandemic.
Well, certainly this has also affected tourism. But tell us, as we try to ascend beyond the impacts of COVID-19, what opportunities perhaps are open to foreign companies, perhaps those in Ghana, in Barbados, to help perhaps in the labor defects in Barbados as a result of COVID-19? Are there any opportunities for foreign direct investments, or perhaps for those who may feel, those who are laid off, who want to perhaps go into the outside world, obviously to seek greener pastures? Are there such avenues in Barbados?
Barbados is always open for business. We have a couple of organizations. One is the Barbados Industrial and Development Corporation, and there's also another organization, Invest Barbados, and they are facilitating organizations for persons who would want to, individuals or companies that would want to invest in Barbados. And there are areas, opportunities for investment. We do some small manufacturing, there is tourism, as we already spoke to. We have been pushing quite significantly into the area of renewable energy, and that is a matter that area that we've gone into. We've also been pushing medicinal cannabis industry, and that is also open for some foreign direct investment.
Okay.
So there are opportunities. We are also focusing on technology, tech in all kinds of areas. And technology is an area that we are encouraging our people to see as an opportunity where you can sell, you can have business, you can develop operation, economic activity, interacting with the world without having necessarily to travel. And that is one of the things that technology allows people to do, that you can remain based in Barbados, but you can sell your services outside of the country. So for Barbadians wanting additional opportunities, technology is the platform that would allow for some of those additional opportunities. We also have some what we call foreign worker programs. Traditionally, we've supplied workers to the United States, to Canada, to England, and we have those programs still in place where some of our people have opportunities, are able to find opportunities in Canada, in the United Kingdom, and to a much smaller degree, but still present in the United States of America.
All right. Well, Reverend Senator Dr. Rogers, well, let me speak to you. So what has been the role of the church? You know, they say religion is the opium of the masses. What has been the role of the church in the wake of some of these labor challenges, especially in the face of COVID-19?
Okay. As expected, the church is there to provide an element of hope to the community through our messages and so on. And that's one of the things we decided to do, particularly in the Anglican communion, I'm sure in the others as well, to make sure that our messages always contain an element of hope as people were going through the various challenges of COVID-19 and the anxieties that one would experience at that time. But also, many of us also stepped up on our outreach in terms of actually the provision of food and necessities to people within the community and even beyond our jurisdiction in our parishes, to make sure that at least people were comfortable and were able to ride out this challenging time. So in that way, as I mentioned earlier, we did our part to ensure that the government focused on the generation of whatever revenue they can at the point in time and dealing with the job situation. But for the church, our job was to make sure that there were messages of hope constantly going out to our people. And we had to do that for some time via our various online platforms because there were times when we couldn't meet. So many churches got involved in Zoom church and YouTube presentations, Facebook, etc., just to get the messages of hope out there to our people, along with the physical needs.
All right. Now, I want you to share your comments on this very concern. The church, religion, and vaccination, COVID-19. Now, many are those who have taken a stance that, COVID-19, obviously, we've seen the challenges with some of the vaccines. We've seen the variations, the mutations in the viruses as well. Many are saying that we can only place our hope on God, and so we should forget about vaccines. As a reverend minister of the church, what are your comments on this?
Okay, well, I will begin by quoting Ecclesiasticus 38, verse 1 and following, our book of Sirach, which is not a part of the canon of the Old Testament, but part of what we call the Apocrypha. And unfortunately, it didn't get in because it was written in Greek and not Hebrew. But Sirach was one who told the people of the time, honor the physicians because their gift comes from God. And honor your pharmacists because God gives them the intellect to put these portions together for our health. And so when you are sick, do not despise the physician. And I think within our community, when we are sick, we go to the doctor. All of a sudden, COVID comes up and there is all this, which is really, I I believe, pharmaceutical companies selling their products and people doing other things. But I have not been hard sell on vaccinations, but what I've encouraged people to do is do their own research and make sure that you go out and get. So I've been, when the vaccines came up, I called around to my elderly people. First of all, when the government made the announcement that we were having vaccinations for our elderly folk, I called my people, made sure I spoke with family members and so on, to have that discussion that if they wanted their loved ones to be vaccinated, they should sign them up and so on. But it was not hard sell in that sense, because that's not what I believe the church should be doing at this point in time. But certainly, we will not discourage people from seeking the medical attention that they need. And so that's the way I've done.
All right. Do we still have Honorable Jordan on the line? Perhaps we lost.
Yes, I'm here, sir.
Okay, so well, Honorable, now let's speak about Africa and Barbados relationships. Now, many are of the view that Barbados is, apart from the geographical setting that sets Africa and Barbados quite apart, that we have some gap between us, especially when it comes to trade and services. How do we bridge this, gap between Africa? Because if you ask a reverend, he will tell you that Africa, perhaps Ghana, let me center on Ghana. Ghana is also such a religious country, and we have the Anglican community here as well. Perhaps I'll speak to him about the 5th edition of the live virtual church service. But how do we bridge the gap? As Minister of Labour, how do we bridge that gap between Africa and Barbados in terms of trade and services?
We have been doing some work on both sides of the Atlantic to bridge that gap. We've established embassies, high commissions in Ghana and Kenya, and we have a commercial and cultural attaché attached to our mission in Ghana. So quite a lot of work has taken place in relation to cementing those connections. Those connections that are deep historical connections, because remember I mentioned earlier that we are a community, a society, where a significant portion of our population has its origins on the Gold Coast, modern-day Ghana. Many of our forefathers came from Ghana. And so what we are really doing is reestablishing a connection. It was a connection that was not at that time done in favor of our people, but it is one that we must reclaim. There is that connection, that historical connection, and we are determined to reestablish the connection on a basis that is now favorable, that recognizes the humanity of all of us. And we are establishing commercial contacts, commercial enterprises. I know some work has been done on the renewable energy front, and I'm sure there are many others in many other avenues being explored. Solar is one of those that has been explored as well. Solar, as opposed to the other PV and other renewable types. And we are pursuing those contacts. We're also pursuing the contacts on the cultural side and the heritage aspect of our development.
All right. Well, in the same vein, let me speak to Senator Reverend Dr. Rogers. Well, Reverend Rogers. Great. So, come August, we're bound to experience our 5th edition of the live virtual church concert across Ghana, Barbados. Now, how do we also, in terms of the Anglican community, apart from such concerts, bridge the gap and create that bond, especially on the basis of Anglicanism for both countries?
Okay, well, The concept of the church service really was mooted by our commercial and cultural attaché to Ghana, Mr. Phil Phillips. And he made the connection between myself and members of the church in Ghana, particularly the Venerable Archdeacon Major Ebenezer Leray. And we've been putting together this bilateral service. It will be held on the 22nd of August, which is the day before the Day of Remembrance of the Transatlantic Slave Trade and its abolition. And it will be centered around that. And the theme of the service is transforming the Middle Passage from an abyss of darkness to a ray of hope.
Right.
Because for us, the Middle Passage, many of our people died in coming to these lands in the Middle Passage. Some died because of the nature of the journey itself. Others opted to choose the Middle Passage as a grave rather than go through what they were experiencing on the ships. And so for us, it has always been a place of darkness and a place to try to forget. But I believe that in going forward as a people, if we're going to make these linkages, there has to be a collective remembering and reclaim the Middle Passage, but claim it as a place of hope, a place of light, where we are now linking with our brothers and sisters on the other side of the Atlantic, with our blood ties, more or less. And so the service will take that particular direction and focus.
All right. So in the same service, Honorable Jordan, you're expected to deliver a 10-minute dossier on the life of Kufe and his contribution to the abolition of slave trade. Who is Kufe and why is he so important to this service and especially to slave trade?
Coffee is important. The name has been less a little bit probably bastardized over the years. I know in Ghana, the pronunciation is coffee, and traditionally we have recorded it in Barbados as coffee. But coffee was important and remains important because he was at the center of the first well-organized attempt to throw off the system of slavery and to determine how a people would live their lives, how they would move forward. So that whole move to self-determination, the first well-organized revolt was centered around coffee. Now, coffee is said to be, in all the historical information that we have, the literature that is there, indicates that in 1675, so not long after settlement, we have those enslaved people in Barbados determining that this system of slavery was brutal, inhumane. Many people suffered, as Senator Rogers indicated earlier. Many died on those ships coming across the Atlantic. Many chose to take their own lives instead of coming to this part of the world and to suffer the brutality that they understood awaited them. And so many of the residents of Barbados at the time, the enslaved people, got together in 1675 and determined that they would craft a plan to overthrow the colonial structure, to destroy that structure, and to install one of their own as their king. And that person was Coffee.
All right.
And Coffee is described in the accounts of the day because there are transcripts that survive, governors sending information back to England. And Coffee is described as a Gold Coast Negro. And we know Gold Coast is modern day, is part of modern day Ghana. And he and his fellow revolutionaries crafted a plan which included, as I said, destroying the existing structure, which was one that denied the humanity of the people coming over from Africa that were forcibly brought to this part of the world from Africa. It attempted to dehumanize those people. And the rebellion, the revolution that was planned was intended, in essence, to replace a brutal system and the monarch of that brutal system with an African-based system and a monarch coming out of the people. So that coffee was supposed to be, it was planned that in June of 1675, the 12th of June, coffee was to be installed in traditional Akan Asante style. He was to be installed in Speightstown, which is part of St. Peter, the capital, the main town in St. Peter. Coffee was to be installed in Speightstown in a grand, it was called a grand ceremony of state.
Okay, so Honorable Jordan, I'm not cutting you out, but due to time constraints, we're going to hold on to that for now, so that when the time is due, that is during the 5th edition of the live concert, live church concert, we witness more and learn more in that 10-minute dossier that you would render.
That's fine.
All right.
That's fine.
All right. So it's been great speaking to you, gentlemen. Let me say a big thank you once again. You woke up very early, as we are 4 hours ahead of you. I believe it's 6 a.m. now.
Yes.
Well,
yes.
So a very good morning to you, and like I said, do have a lovely day, and thank you very much for joining me. I believe that prior to the church service in August, we will have some further conversations to spark up the interest in the service, because we definitely would broadcast live here at Adwa Television.
Thank you.
We look forward to that.
All right, all right. So, interestingly, I have just had a conversation with the Honorable Collins E. Jordan, who is the Member of Parliament for St. Peter Parish, just one of the 11 administrative divisions of Barbados. Barbados is divided into the parishes, like I indicated. He's also the Minister of Labour, Social Partnership and Relations, and the third sector. If you want to know more about the third sector, this is about civil societies, NGOs, amongst other things. And then there is the social partnership and relations. He will tell us more on that in some other conversations. We also spoke to the Senator, Reverend Dr. John Rogers, who is the parish priest for St. George Parish Church. He's also an independent. He's an independent senator and a member of the selected senators by the government general. Well, it has been a great discussion so far, and thank you for enjoying this one. We brought you conversations on biohazards as far as poultry is concerned. We also brought you the newspaper headlines and some conversations today on Am.Ghana. Always remember, like we indicated from the beginning, stay positive. I've run the show with Michael Kuma, Anastasia Badu, and myself, Reginald Adi. Until we'll see you tomorrow with some further discussions. Have a lovely day and enjoy the rest of our programs. What's it to saying is up next in 30.